Hey everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer for NC State on SI, Tucker Sennett, here to talk about the full ACC slate of games after that week 4 Saturday. NC State obviously fell to Duke 45-33 on the road in Durham. Tough loss overall, sort of a second half collapse after a critical momentum swing late in the first half helped Duke take a lead instead of going into the half down at least 6, maybe 9 points. Um, and it just sort of fell apart slowly over the course of the game for NC State. But a unique day for the conference, some unfortunate losses mixed with some pretty dominant performances from the top. And I think we now, after this week, have a pretty strong idea of who the most competitive teams in the ACC really are. And that's sort of the main takeaway from today. So without further ado, let's get into the games. Miami took down the Florida Gators. The number 4 Hurricanes hosted the Gators in the midst of a true gauntlet within their schedule, and the Canes just took care of business. It was a business-like performance from them against a pretty strong Florida defense, despite the record. Carson Beck didn't have his best day, threw for 160 yards and a pick, but Mark Fletcher really picked up the slack. He ran for over 100 yards and a touchdown, and they just sort of slowly grinded this Florida team to death and proved that their defense is legit. I think that was a big takeaway from this game for Miami is they have a legitimate defense. Then you had FSU back in action this week. They had a weather delay situation, but just absolutely dominated Kent State in another sort of let's figure some things out game for the Seminoles. Strong performance from their rushing game once again. They scored 35 points in the first quarter. This was a blowout. Nothing really serious to take away from this. Georgia Tech followed their massive upset win over Clemson with another win this week over Temple, 45-24. Haynes King, 2 touchdowns passing, and then, of course, also did some damage on the ground, as he always does, with a touchdown. And Georgia Tech just sort of got the job done. Nothing really to write home about against this Temple team. They probably won't do much to move up in terms of the rankings, but continue to be a very strong ACC team and quality representative of the conference. Then maybe the most interesting day of the game in terms of the outlook of the conference and proof that a team projected to be a national championship contender has truly fallen from its pedestal, and that is Clemson losing at home to Syracuse 34-21. The wheels have fallen off the bus on the Dabo Sweeney train. Cade Klubnik had to throw the ball 60 times in this game. He threw 3 touchdowns and an interception, but it was just not enough against this Syracuse team that did lose quarterback Steve Angeli to what Fran Brown called a long-term injury today. So unfortunate for the Orange, but they go to Clemson and maybe act as the dagger to this Clemson dynasty. They have Dabo sort of in shambles seemingly after every game. One of their Clemson's worst starts to a season since he took command of the program. And certainly not looking like the Tigers will be involved in terms of the power structure of the conference, barring some sort of collapse, similar to what happened last year to Miami, that allows Clemson to get into the ACC championship game. You got Virginia Tech bouncing back from the loss that cost Brent Pry his job with a 38-6 win over Wofford. Nothing of note there. It's expected that Virginia Tech's going to lose some players this week for redshirt reasons, so they can preserve their eligibility. They got that last game on tape. SMU looks like it will also not be a contender to return to the college football playoff. They lost the Iron Skillet game to their rival TCU 35 to 24. A disappointing effort for the Mustangs, and it's looking like they will not be the competitive team that a lot of people thought they would be. Louisville sort of has now, I think, proved that they're probably the third or fourth best team in the conference pretty solidly. I think they probably could be competitive against Georgia Tech as that third best team. They took care of business against Bowling Green, 40 to 17, and they're moving on to their conference slate now. The Chapel Bill experiment continues to end poorly on the football field. They went to Orlando to play UCF, not Central Florida, as Bill Belichick called them. And they got throttled again, 34 to 9. Their offense was just horrific in this game. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see that game between them and Clemson coming up because those are two teams that are really, really not looking like competitive football teams in the ACC right now, and we'll see. That'll be a true test to just how bad this North Carolina team really is, because this Clemson team looks like an absolute mess, given all the talk about them coming into the season, and then North Carolina is just a disaster across the board. Virginia took down Stanford 48 to 20 in a conference matchup. The Cavaliers have sort of impressed me and quietly raised my expectations for what their season could look like. I think given their schedule, let me just look here, but I think given their schedule, they could win 7 or 8 games. I think bowl eligibility is certainly on the table. Next week will be a really stiff challenge against the Florida Hurricanes. That's actually going to be a Friday night game um, at home for Virginia, luckily, but Florida State just looks like a wagon. Then they're at Louisville. That probably is a loss. You get Washington State. I think that's a win at home. You go to North Carolina. I think that's a win. You go to Cal. That's probably the game that's going to dictate whether you're going to reach that bowl eligibility standard. Let's finish with Cal. A lot of talk about them this week with quarterback Jaron Keave Sagapulatele, and they had a sort of prove that you're legit game against SDSU on the road in San Diego. And it was a nightmare. A lot of turnovers for Cal. Sagapulatele threw a pick six. Um, they didn't score. It was 34 nothing. And so they have sort of come back to earth after that huge win over Big Ten opponent Minnesota last week. So an unfortunate development for the conference that was hoping maybe to get a sneaky quality team out of the Golden Bears, which looks like the Bears are not what we thought they were. That's all I got for the ACC slate. Apologies for the shorter episode today. Just not a lot to dig into here outside of that Clemson game, and then obviously the NC State game, which I did the sights and sounds yesterday. But we'll be talking more about the fallout of that loss for the Wolfpack and what it means for them over the course of the week. And if you want more content, feel free to follow me on X at Sennett Tucker. You can follow the website at Wolfpack on SI on X as well. Follow the Facebook, the NC State Wolfpack on SI Facebook page, and find more of these episodes on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. I hope you guys enjoyed your weekend, and we'll see you over the course of the week.